Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratvashe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Somebody would like to revise a few points from yesterday?
Prabhuji, yesterday one very striking point that you mentioned was that when we submit the hearing process, then actually that is beneficial. Otherwise, just physically we are in the class, but mentally we are hovering somewhere. That is not right. So this was the take back that I took from yesterday's class.
It's very important point. So what did you understand from that statement, submitting to the hearing process?
Yeah, we have to apply whatever we hear in the class, and our endeavor should be always that whatever I've heard in the class, making points and then start applying them in your life.
Okay,
then that turns into realization.
Then what will be the result of that? You remember that point?
No, Prabhuji, I don't.
Okay, okay, fine. Yes, Sudhamanath.
Then proportionately we will develop detachment, and we will be able to that degree we will be able to relish, get spiritual bliss in our life.
So gradually and proportionately, what will reduce?
The desire for sense gratification will reduce.
The long cherished desire to dominate material nature. That is what will reduce, and then one will be able to relish the spiritual bliss. Okay, good. Some other points? Anybody else would like to contribute? Yes, Raghu.
Hare Krishna. So yesterday we were also discussing that how the Prabhupada in the purports that if the anger increases, then sometimes it gets increased, excessively also. One gets carried, when we get carried away also. So that is one important thing. So you also asked some practical thing what could be done. And in the purport, Prabhupada mentions that constant hearing. So Shrutena Bhuyasa, that is the word there. So if we constantly hear about devotional service, then one can check the force of anger. That's what I think. So.
Okay, good point. Something else? Online, anybody wants to share any points?
Yeah, yesterday we also discussed about going back home, back to Godhead, when Dhruva Maharaj is asking for constant remembrance of the Lord. So we discussed actually it's more important than the physical place of transferring. It is actually becoming fully Krishna conscious and elevating our consciousness.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. Yes, that false ambition to be the controller. Okay, then we start the next chapter, the 12th chapter. Dhruva Maharaj goes back to Godhead. So in this, we finish two sections. The first section is the benediction that Kubera gives to Dhruva Maharaj. So what is the benediction Dhruva Maharaj asked for? What is the benediction he receives? Yes, Selection.
Constant remembrance of Krishna.
Yes, constant remembrance of Krishna. Faith, with faith, unflinching remembrance of the Lord. That's the benediction which he receives. And then the next section we discussed how Dhruva Maharaj, he rules the kingdom, performing various sacrifices, and then he was filled with all, endowed with all godly qualities, Shila Sampannam, Brahmanyam, Dina Vatsalam. So all that we discussed. Okay, you can on that, 12th chapter sections. Okay, so we go to the next section. And this is yes, the main section of the chapter from 17 to 35 of Dhruva Maharaj going back to the spiritual worlds. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Okay, text 17. Let's read the translation. In Badrikashram, Dhruva Maharaj's senses became completely purified because he bathed regularly in the crystal clear purified water. He fixed his sitting position and by yogic practice controlled the breathing process and the air of life. In this way, his senses were completely withdrawn. Then he concentrated his mind on the Archavigra form of the Lord, which is the exact replica of the Lord, and thus meditating upon him entered into complete trance. Okay, so Prabhupada writes, here's a description of the Ashtanga Yoga system to which Dhruva Maharaj was already accustomed. So therefore, he was using the principles of Ashtanga Yoga in order to fix his mind in meditation on the Supreme Lord, the Archavigra. Srila Prabhupada is speaking about the Archavigra being non-different from the original spiritual form of the Lord. And yes, so in this way, he is in total trance, meditating on the form of the Lord. Text 18. Let's recite. Bhaktim harau bhagavati pravahan ajasram ananda bashpa kalaya muhur ardhyamanaha viklidyamana hridaya pulakachitango natma namasmaradasa viti mukta lingaha.
Hare Krishna. Because of his transcendental bliss, incessant tears flowed from his eyes, his heart melted, and there was shivering and standing of hairs all over his body. Thus transformed in trance of devotional service, Dhruva Maharaj completely forgot his bodily existence, and thus he immediately became liberated from material bondage.
Okay, so in this way, we see that because of his performance of devotional service, his meditation on the Supreme Lord, he has become totally liberated from all material contamination. Mukta lingaha, which is liberation from even the subtle body. So totally on the liberated platform. As Prabhupada explains, all the Ashta Sattvika Vikar were present in his body. And Srila Prabhupada is also given the example of the coconut. The example is given that when a coconut becomes completely dry, the coconut pulp within the coconut shell separates from the bondage of the shell and the outer covering. By moving the dry coconut, one can hear that the pulp within is no longer attached to the shell or to the covering. Similarly, when one is fully absorbed in devotional service, he is completely disconnected from the two material coverings, namely the subtle and the gross body. Dhruva Maharaj actually attained this stage of life by constantly discharging devotional service. He has already been described as a Mahabhagavat, for unless one becomes a Mahabhagavat or a first-class pure devotee, these symptoms are not visible. And then he's talking about how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and also Haridas Thakur exhibited such symptoms. So this is a well-known example of the coconut. So while remaining within the body, even during that time, one can be totally on the liberated platform, totally separated from the gross and the subtle body. So that is Mukta Linga or Jivan Mukta. Right. So an important point here is, in the next paragraph, Prabhupada is explaining, while existing in the present body, the same subtle body carries him from one stage of life to another, for example, from childhood to boyhood, by mental development. The mental condition of a baby is different from that of a boy is different from a young man, and so on. So at death, the process of changing bodies takes place due to the subtle body. So this is also explained very nicely in the Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter, verses 6 to 11. This section is entitled Transmigration, where the Lord describes that how basically, and Srila Prabhupada explains in those purports, consciousness is originally pure. Just like rainwater is originally pure, but when the rainwater comes on the ground, it becomes contaminated. Similarly, consciousness is originally pure. But when the jiva comes into this world, then immediately the consciousness becomes contaminated by the influence of the modes. And so it's explained that even while living in this present body, we are creating a certain type of consciousness. So sometimes you see those photographs, no? The body is like that of a human being, but then the face is like that of a tiger. Some photos are there like that, right? In Bhagavad Gita also. Bhagavad Gita, some other books you find. So while the person is there in the human body, his consciousness is that of an animal. Like Prabhupada, he tells his experience how on the plane, the person sitting next to him is relishing hog's intestines. So what type of consciousness is that? So even though externally is in the human body, his consciousness is just not human. So therefore, the subtle body is already animal-like. The subtle body is already animal. Therefore, when the human body is given up, then the subtle body just fits into a gross body. Already subtle body has been created. Then when this body changes, material nature just gives a gross body fitting the subtle body. So therefore, this is 15 chapter 6. I think it's the 9th or the 10th verse. It said mana adhishthanam. Mana adhishthanam. So all the senses, they fit around the mind. So depending upon what is the consciousness in the mind, then that type of gross body just fits on top of that. Therefore, the whole focus is what? Consciousness. International Society for Krishna Consciousness. What is the consciousness that we are cultivating? That is most important. Because it is that consciousness which is going to create the next gross body. And this has been explained at various places, both Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, again in the talks between Narad Muni and King Prachin Barishad, coming later on in the 4th canto. Narad Muni elaborately speaks on the subtle body, which is so important. And he describes how the subtle body is carrying so many impressions since time immemorial, so many impressions. Prabhupada writes, they're all stacked up in a pile. All these impressions in the subtle body, they're stacked up in a pile. And for all those impressions, one has to get different gross bodies. To satisfy those material desires, those impressions which are there in the subtle body, one will have to accept various gross bodies. So that is how the transformation of the subtle body is something which is very, very important for getting an appropriate gross body. Therefore, on the path of Krishna consciousness, it is not just the gross activity that is performed that is important. The activities per se, so many people are performing. Even materialistic people, they're cooking. Materialistic people are making garlands. Materialistic people are also selling books. Materialistic people are making buildings. Everything they're doing. What we are doing, they're also doing. What makes the difference? The only thing that makes the difference is the consciousness. That is the only difference. So if the consciousness is not there, and then the activity simply becomes materialistic without the consciousness. Therefore, Mam Anusmara Yudhyacha. Krishna didn't say only fight. Mam Anusmara. Remembering me, fight. Or as Shankar Pandit Prabhu was also explaining in the Bhagavatam class, the main important essence of the practice of sadhana bhakti is Smartavya Satatam Vishnu Vismartavya Najatuchit Sarve Vidi Nishedasyo Retayo Reva Kinkarha. The essence is to always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. That means the motive, the consciousness with which we are performing the activity, that makes the whole difference. That is what Krishna is looking for. He is looking for that consciousness with which we are performing an activity, the consciousness of love and devotion. The activity is being performed not just mechanically for the sake of doing it, but the activity is being performed with the consciousness that I want to please Guru and Krishna. That is the consciousness. So if that consciousness of trying to please Guru and Krishna by the performance of the activity, if that is not there, then it simply remains, of course, some Sukriti will be there, but it will remain a materialistic activity unless that consciousness is there. And therefore, throughout the Shastra, there is great emphasis on the consciousness with which an activity is performed. And that is the essence which Krishna is also speaking about. When Krishna speaks, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati Tadaham Bhakti Uparitam Ashnami Prayatatmana. The word bhakti used there indicates that what Krishna is looking for is the bhakti element. As Prabhupada in so many lectures, Prabhupada says, Krishna doesn't want your puri, kachori, rasgulla. He doesn't want that. He has Lakshmi Sahasra Shatasamra. So many people are there to serve him. But what he's looking for is that bhakti. He's looking for that love and devotion. How we are performing the activity with the attitude, with the consciousness that I want to please Guru and Krishna. I don't want to please my own senses with this activity. How can I please Guru and Krishna? So when the right consciousness is there, then one's gross body also will fit accordingly to the subtle body. That is what is being, Srila Prabhupada is explaining in this word, Mukta Lingaha. So therefore, in the last paragraph of the purport, Prabhupada is explaining, the description of the bodily symptoms of Sri Dhruva Maharaj makes it apparent that he became perfectly fit to be transferred to the spiritual world. One can experience the distinction between the subtle and the gross bodies even daily. In a dream, one's gross body is lying on the bed, while the subtle body carries the soul, the living entity, to another atmosphere. But because the gross body has to be continued, the subtle body comes back and settles in the present gross body. So even at night, the subtle body goes. We all have experience. The mind is somewhere else totally. And we actually identify with that situation. We are convinced that we are in that situation because the subtle body is outside, somewhere else. But then, because the gross body has to be continued, the subtle body comes back and settles in the present gross body. Therefore, one has to become free from the subtle body also. This freedom is known as Mukta Linga. Okay, so on this liberated platform, then what happened? Please continue to read. 19th verse.
As soon as the symptoms of his liberation were manifest, he saw a very beautiful airplane coming down from the sky, as if the brilliant full moon were coming down, illuminating all the 10 directions.
Yes. So Prabhupada says, Dhruva Maharaj, being liberated from the material concept of life, was situated in transcendental knowledge and could perceive the presence of a transcendental airplane which was as brilliant as the full moonlight. This is not possible in the stages of direct or indirect perception of knowledge. Prabhupada is speaking about the different levels of knowledge. Direct knowledge, knowledge received from authorities. What are the Sanskrit words? Pratyaksha. Huh? Pratyaksha. Then after that is aparoksha or paroksha? Pratyaksha, paroksha, aparoksha, adhokshaja, and knowledge beyond the senses, that is adhokshaja, and finally spiritual knowledge. I'm forgetting the, Prabhupada speaks about this in his lectures. Was that? Oh. Okay. So in any case, so because Dhruva Maharaj was situated in transcendental knowledge and could perceive the presence, because he was situated on that liberated platform, therefore he could perceive this transcendental airplane. This is not possible in the stages of direct or indirect perception of knowledge. Such knowledge is a special favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can, however, rise to this platform of knowledge by the gradual process of advancing in devotional service or Krishna consciousness. Please continue. Text 20. You can read two translations.
Dhruva Maharaj saw two very beautiful associates of Lord Vishnu in the plain. They had 4 hands and a blackish bodily luster. They were very youthful, and their eyes were just like reddish lotus flowers. They held clubs in their hands, and they were dressed in very attractive garments with helmets and were decorated with necklaces, bracelets, and earrings.
Dhruva Maharaj, seeing that these uncommon personalities were direct servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, immediately stood up. But being puzzled in hastiness, he forgot how to receive them in the proper way. Therefore, he simply offered obeisances with folded hands and chanted and glorified the holy name of the Lord.
Yes. So when he saw these Vaikuntavasis, he was wonderstruck. All of a sudden these spiritual beings came. So he was so much wonderstruck that he could not welcome them properly. He was sort of stunned. So therefore he forgot how to receive them in the proper way. So he didn't understand what to do, what not to do. And therefore what he did, he simply offered obeisance with folded hands, Samhata Anjali. And then he simply chanted the holy names, Namani Grinan. So Prabhupada writes, chanting of the holy names of the Lord is perfect in every way. So when Dhruva Maharaj saw the Vishnudutas, the direct associates of Lord Vishnu, 4-handed and nicely decorated, he could understand who they were, but for the time being, he was puzzled. But simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, the Hare Krishna mantra, he could satisfy the uncommon guests who had all of a sudden arrived before him. The chanting of the holy name of the Lord is perfect, even though one does not know how to please Lord Vishnu or his associates. Simply by sincerely chanting the holy name of the Lord, everything becomes perfect. A devotee, therefore, either in danger or in happiness, constantly chants the Hare Krishna mantra. When he's in danger, he's immediately relieved. And when he's in a position to see Lord Vishnu or his associates directly, by chanting this Mahamantra, he can please the Lord. This is the absolute nature of the Mahamantra. Either in danger or in happiness, it can be chanted without limitation. That's the glory of the chanting of the holy names, which is non-different from the Lord's. Please continue.
Dhruva Maharaj was always absorbed in thinking of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. His heart was full with Krishna. When the two confidential servants of the Supreme Lord, who were named Nanda and Sunanda, approached him, smiling happily, Dhruva stood with folded hands, bowing humbly. They addressed him as follows.
Yes. So when he saw them, he simply stood there smiling and bowing down. and then he addressed them. Srila Prabhupada makes an important point in the second paragraph of his purport, or even in the first paragraph, there is one important sentence. Prabhupada is commenting on the verse sammatau. Sammatau means two confidential or very obedient servants. The materialistic way of life differs from the spiritual way of life in that one is disobedience and the other is obedience to the will of the Supreme Lord. Next paragraph. In the Vaikuntha world, all the living entities are in oneness with the Supreme Godhead because they never defy his orders. Here in the material world, however, they are not sammata, agreeable, but always asammata, disagreeable. This human form of life is a chance to be trained to be agreeable to the orders of the Supreme Lord. To bring about this training in society is the mission of the Krishna consciousness movement. So, Prabhupada is giving one of the mission statements for ISKCON. So this is, we have discussed this. Prabhupada's mood and mission statement. Throughout his purports, he gives mood and mission statements. So here is a mood and mission statement. So the one of his mission is to train the living entities, to train devotees. For what purpose? So that they become sammata, so that they become agreeable to what? To the orders of the Supreme Lord. That is the purpose. So in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, it is mentioned how Parishit Maharaj, as he was touring the kingdom, he was hearing the glories of his forefathers, the Pandavas. And he was hearing how the Lord agreed to do such menial services for the Pandavas, like being a watchman, peace messenger, charioteer. So many menial services the Lord was ready to do for the Pandavas. Why? Prabhupada very beautifully explains one very significant quality of the Pandavas. Anybody remembers? Yes, malleable. Because they were malleable in the hands of the Supreme Lord, they were malleable to the desires of the Supreme Lord. So everyone knows malleable, correct? So many engineers present here. So which is the most malleable metal? Gold? What? Aluminium? Okay. I don't know. What do some other engineers say? And anybody did chemical engineering here? Anyways, I heard gold is the most malleable because gold can be made into thin wires, plates, however you want, you can mold gold. So gold is highly malleable. So the Pandavas were so malleable to the desires. They were ready to go through so much of suffering just to satisfy the Supreme Lord, the desires and the plans of the Supreme Lord. So that is why the Lord became purchased by the Pandavas because of this quality of being totally malleable to the desires of the Supreme Lord. And so similarly, we find how Srila Prabhupada, how he was malleable to the desires of his spiritual master. And then we find so many examples of Srila Prabhupada's disciples being totally malleable to the desires of Srila Prabhupada. So I think so many of us have heard that story of Yamuna Mataji ready to jump off the train to get rice for Srila Prabhupada. I'm sure everyone knows that pastime. And then, if I'm not mistaken, that same train, which was going from Amritsar to Calcutta, That same train stopped at Delhi. And when the train stopped at Delhi, one life member came. There was only one life member in Delhi at that time. So that one life member came to greet Srila Prabhupada. And then he said, Swamiji, it'll be very nice if there is one center here. Prabhupada immediately said, Prabhupada told Gurudas, Yamuna Mataji, and 2-3 other devotees, get down the train. Get down the train, start one center here. They didn't know anyone, who is there, what is there, nothing. Just took their bags and got down. That's it. And of course, there are so many stories like that in the lives of Prabhupada disciples. One person went to different countries to start preaching without any money, without contacts, nothing practically. Srila Prabhupada once, there was one meeting or in one program, one person challenged Srila Prabhupada. And he said, Swamiji, you're preaching in so many countries, but you're not preaching anywhere in these Muslim countries. You're not preaching. Why? Prabhupada took it as a challenge. And immediately Prabhupada called Brahmanand Prabhu and Gargamuni Prabhu, and he sent Brahmanand Prabhu to Pakistan and Gargamuni Prabhu to Bangladesh. On the spot. And even though at that time it was so risky to go to these places, these devotees went. And then we hear how later on Prabhupada received a news article that some Americans have been killed in Pakistan. Prabhupada was so worried. And then, of course, he called Brahmanand Prabhu back. And when Brahmanand Prabhu came back, Srila Prabhupada embraced him with tears in his eyes. Srila Prabhupada was so pleased with him. He risked his life, literally risked his life. Of course, in the present day, nobody will give us such instructions anyways. That type of difficult instructions and those things may never happen. But at least we have to try to follow the little instructions that we receive. At least that much we can try to follow. So that is what attracts the mercy of the Supreme Lord. That is the characteristic of the Vishnu Dutas. That is the characteristic of the devotees of the Lord. They are sammata, they are agreeable to the desires of the Lord. That is their characteristic. That is Vaikuntha. And only when one comes to that platform, one will be allowed entrance into Vaikuntha. That is Maya Devi's business. That is why Maya Devi puts the living entities, the devotees through various tests, so that until they come to that platform of being totally agreeable to the desires of the Supreme Lord, they will not be allowed entrance. Because if a rebellious living entity goes to the spiritual world, big problems for Krishna there. So therefore, Maya Devi filters out. So the next question arises, so how can we come to this platform? We have to come to this platform in order to achieve Vaikuntha, correct? Correct? So, and everyone knows that one of those famous statements of Srila Prabhupada in the Narad Muni section in the first canto, he speaks about 3 important qualities to go back home, back to Godhead. What are they? What you said? Disciplined, obedient, and? Prabhupada adds one adjective to the obedience. He says fully obedient. Unless one is disciplined, fully obedient, and self-controlled, No one can be successful in pleasing the spiritual master, and without doing so, no one can be successful in going back home, back to Godhead. Hmm. And here also Srila Prabhupada is speaking about obedience. Hmm. Yes. The materialistic way of life differs from the spiritual way of life in that one is disobedience and the other is obedience to the will of the Supreme Lord. That is the difference. Hmm. So, obedience, sammata, being agreeable to the desires of the Supreme Lord. So, how can we increase these qualities? How can we more and more develop these qualities? Because that's our ultimate goal, to come to the platform where we are totally agreeable to the desires of the Supreme Lord, of course, coming down in parampara through the acharyas. So, okay, just have a quick discussion with your partners. How can we increase these qualities? How can we develop them? Or if already developed, how can we increase them? Quick, just 3-4 minutes. Some write down at least 2-3 points. How can we increase these qualities? Okay, fine. Hare Krishna. Okay, so everyone can tell one point how we can increase this quality. Okay, let's begin from here. Dhruv Maharaj Prabhu.
Regularly hearing spiritual master's warning.
Okay, good point. Regularly hearing the spiritual master's Vani. And what to do after hearing? Hear and what? Apply. So just hearing, we may hear so many lectures, we may keep on hearing. That's what we were discussing yesterday. We may keep on hearing so much, maybe to fill sadhana card or whatever it may be. So hearing may go on, but then how much is the application? That is the important point. Okay, another point here.
Correct. Actually, this obedience can, by trying to follow, taking small steps on regular basis, we try to follow, and that will build our this habit. For example, even in following the morning program standards strictly, coming to this class in time. Actually, in our system, this obedience is getting built up, and when we try to neglect it, that's the seed of disobedience grows. So that also we have to follow.
Yes, good point. So every time we follow, we are creating a sanskar by which the quality increases. And every time we don't follow, then we are creating a sanskar where the mind gives more and more justification to not follow. That is what we can see in ourselves. The moment we follow, we get more strength to follow. The moment we don't follow, then Maya also gives us perfect justifications to not follow. That's exactly what happens. That's how you may have heard in even seminars on habits and so many other things. So this is how good habits are built, and this is how bad habits are also built. Every time we practice a good thing, it gets reinforced, and every time we practice a bad thing, that also gets reinforced. That is how people become drug addicts, chain smokers. That's how it happens. So anything we cultivate, anything we cultivate, that gets reinforced. Right, good point. Thank you. Yes, we're going in line here. Who's the next?
Always remembering our insignificant position in this material world. So Naham Vipro Chanarapati na Vivashvana Shudru. But I am just Gopi Bhartu Padakamalu or Dasa Dasan Das. People may say that I am maybe king or some head of the department, but we should know that my position is very insignificant. Time may take out everything and I will be left alone in this material world. So spiritual master came to save us. So by following him, only the way to get out of this material world.
Okay, good. Very good point. Always meditating on the fact that I'm simply an insignificant servant. And what is the most important quality of the servant?
To obey.
Yes, to obey. That is the most important quality of the servant. There is, in one lecture, Srila Prabhupada quotes Chanakya Pandit, and he says, a servant who backfires is no good servant. You know what is mean of back answer? So master is telling something, the servant back answers, ulta uttar dena. So rather than obeying, he says, why should I do? So Prabhupada says, somebody who answers like that is no good servant at all. Right. Some other point?
Anyway, we have to obey our mind and senses. Why not Guru? Or
Good point. Yes. Ultimately, one has to become somebody's servant. As Prabhupada says, if one does not have anybody to serve, at least he'll serve the dog. Or if no dog also, then he'll serve mind and senses. So somebody's servant one has to be. So why not become servant of Guru and Krishna? Thank you. Yes, Prabhu.
we can develop obedience by developing affection for that person. We develop affection by doing some service for the person.
So how does that help? What is the connection between this affection and obedience?
When there's affection, we have a very natural feeling to please that person. So if someone says something, then we don't just have a
it's not just the right thing, but it's something that will please the person who we want to please. So that affection makes it easy for.
Okay, very good point. So yes, if we have affection, then yes, we want to please the person, then we obey the person. But somebody may raise a question, what if we don't have affection?
So by serving, we develop affection.
Okay, so which comes first? So we serve and then develop affection, or first we have to have affection and then serve?
First, we serve with respect. We obey.
Hmm.
In that way, we actually develop also the affection, and that person also showers blessings. So that actually leads to proper disposition in more dynamic situations.
Okay, good point. So initially it has to begin with respect.
Yeah.
The affection may not be there initially, but at least as a respect, out of respect one serves, and then gradually as one serves.
In the Sutta Goswami's glorification, it said as snigdha.
Yes.
So the snigdha helps us to develop mercy of the Vaishnavas.
Right. Okay, good point. Thank you.
If we understand this principle that from Bhagavad Gita, when we render selfless devotional service on Nishkama platform, then we get realization. So for Nishkama devotional service, we have to come above likes and dislikes. For that, we have to be obedient. So then only we get realization.
So what is the connection between this coming above likes and dislikes and realization? What is the connection?
Because if you are in mental, because there is selfishness, when there is a consideration of like and dislike, there is selfishness. But when one performs a selfless devotional service, then only the realization comes.
So that's what I'm asking. What's the connection between this realization and performing activities in a selfless way? What is the connection? Anybody else would like? Huh? Good.
This I had heard from Bhagavad Gita. There.
No, your point is perfect, but
yeah.
I'm just looking for a little more understanding of what's the connection. Yes, Raghu?
When we are selflessly, means selfish, it's like selflessly means we have to go out of our comfortable zone.
Correct.
When we are going just little out of comfortable, just like which I have given an example of Bhavanand Prabhu, Bhavanand Maharaj, he have gone out of his selfless, and with that motive, when he realized also, and even Prabhupada also gave that. Otherwise, if we are there within limitation of that, we won't get the exact realization what we are supposed to get. Knowledge we will get. So that jnana will be always there, but vijnana it doesn't come. That is realized knowledge doesn't comes up.
Right.
So when it comes up, that comes with through the obedience.
Correct.
That's the link we is trying to.
Correct. Somebody would like to elaborate a little more. Okay, Deshanti.
हरिदास प्रभु से पहले बार बार मिलता था, तो उन्होंने बताया कि उनकी जो प्रभुपाद के प्रति जो प्रेम और जो करने की, जो भी बोला वो करने की जो उनकी वृत्ति है कैसे बढ़ी। तो बता रहे थे कि मैं तो चोरी करने आया था, लेकिन प्रभुपाद ने मेरा वो बुरा देखा नहीं, तो मुझे प्रेम से जो बात किया और जो मुझे उन्होंने अपना समझा, तो उस कारण मेरा जो उनके प्रति जो प्रेम बढ़ गया, और वो जो प्रेम एक बार उनके ऊपर जो मेरा जो प्रेम है, वो प्रेम के कारण उनके लिए, और वो जो मुझसे बहुत सारी गलतियां होती थी, लेकिन वो उसको भी संभाल के लेते थे और मुझे विश्वास के साथ दूसरा सेवा देते थे। तो इसके कारण इतना मेरा उनके ऊपर विश्वास बढ़ गया कि उनके लिए मैं कुछ भी करने के लिए तैयार हो गया, मैंने सब कुछ छोड़ दिया उनका। तो ऐसा कि वो इतना ओबीडिएंट बन गए। तो ऐसा कि जब जो हमारे अथॉरिटी है या जो गुरु भी है, तो जो हमसे एक बार ऐसा प्रेम का आदान प्रदान हो जाता है, तो फिर उसके लिए हो जाता है।
Okay, good point. Good point. Okay, so we're looking for that connection between realization. Raghav.
When we perform that selfless, as he Prabhu was telling that likes, dislikes, that means then we are willing to be obedient to the Guru. So that by that what happens, the Guru becomes pleased, and that's how because of his blessings, that realization descends.
Yes, that's right. So Prabhupada writes in the purport to 6.8 Bhagavad Gita, you can read that. Realization comes by grace. So when one pleases Guru and Krishna, by their grace, one develops realizations. When one develops realizations, then one becomes steady on the path and one is not deviated by mental concoctions. Prabhupada writes all this in the purport to 6.8. So this is how one can get realization by the grace. And then when one gets realizations, one becomes fixed up, one becomes steady on the path of devotion service. Right. So thank you for the point, Prabhu. Yes, next group there.
Guruji, we just we understand we realized that we felt that means our understanding is to the degree there is conscious effort in chanting our 16 rounds attentively, and to the degree we try to protect ourselves from Namaprad, to that degree we please Guru and Krishna, and by their mercy we develop these qualities. Otherwise, merely by one's own effort, if there is no conscious effort in improving the quality of our rounds, then though these qualities may manifest for some temporary time, but the practitioner will remain at mental level with these practices, and it will soon evaporate also.
Okay, so you're saying inoffensive chanting. So inoffensive chanting helps one become purified, and then that will help one develop the qualities. Yes, that's correct. Good point. Yes, here.
By following superior and remain accountable to them and track where we are, then these qualities we will develop easily.
Okay, good points. Yes, by being accountable to our superiors, then we can try and develop these qualities. Good points. Online, any answers online, please?
Obedience is the first law of discipline. Means if there is no obedience, there is no discipline, and we cannot manage these things.
Excuse me, please. If there is no obedience,
there is no discipline.
There is no discipline. Okay, correct. So how to develop that? That's our discussion.
Yeah, by associating with the people who are already obedient to the spiritual master or authority.
Okay, good point. Yes, by association we can develop the qualities. Correct. Thank you. Any other points?
Hare Krishna. We develop desire to be obedient and be faithful by hearing about and reading about such qualities of Prabhupada and his disciples in Prabhupada Leelamrut. Like yesterday you narrated about Surabhi Prabhu. And
Yes,
also, yeah, and also contemplating our motives behind our services and being conscious about it and reminding ourselves about it, trying to perform devotional service for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna.
Okay, good point. Yes, so by studying the examples of the previous acharyas, of other devotees, and trying to imbibe the same mood. Further down in the purport, Srila Prabhupada further continues to say, almost towards the end of the purport, Prabhupada says, simply by becoming agreeable to the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and by developing love of Godhead, Dhruva got the chance to personally meet the confidential servants of Lord Vishnu face to face. What was possible for Dhruva Maharaj is possible for everyone. So it is not that sometimes tendency is, okay, that was possible for Dhruva. That was in Satya Yuga. Now, very difficult. No, Prabhupada is saying it is possible. Now also it is possible for everyone. And how is it possible? Anyone who very seriously engages in devotional service. That is the solution. How it is going to be possible? Anyone who very seriously engages in devotional service can obtain in due course of time the same perfection of the human form of life. So we have discussed this so many times. Prabhupada keeps on repeating these two words, sincere and serious. So that is the key to achieving the same goal as Dhruva Maharaj achieved. Okay, so now Nanda and Sunanda begin to speak. Please continue reading. I think so Manmohan Shampru, you have the mic in front of you. Maybe you can read.
Nanda and Sunanda, the two confidential associates of Lord Vishnu, said, Dear king, let there be all good fortune unto you. Please attentively hear what we shall say. When you were only 5 years old, you underwent severe austerities, and you thereby greatly satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Another mission statement Srila Prabhupada is giving in the purport. It is necessary for the leaders of the Krishna consciousness movement to start educational institutions in different parts of the world to train children starting at the age of 5 years. Thus, such children will not become hippies or spoiled children of society. Rather, they can all become devotees of the Lord. The face of the world will then change automatically. Okay, continue reading, please.
We are representatives of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the creator of the whole universe, who carries in his hand the bow named Saranga. We have been specifically deputed to take you to the spiritual world.
Okay, so the Lord specifically sent his associates, his servants to get Dhruva. So, Prabhupada writes, throughout his life, please note the point, throughout his life, he tried to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by austerity and penances. Okay, so it is not a one-day process, two-day process. What it is? Throughout the life. Throughout the life, one has to seriously practice devotional service, practice austerities and penances. Now the mature result was that Dhruva Maharaj became fit to be carried to the spiritual world, accompanied by the confidential associates of the Lord. Okay, please continue.
To achieve Vishnu Loka is very difficult, but by your austerity you have conquered. Even the great rishis and demigods cannot achieve this position. Simply to see the Supreme Lord, the sun and the moon, and all the other planets, stars, lunar mansions, and solar system are circumambulating it. Now please come, you are welcome to go there.
Okay, so they're inviting him to come to the Vishnu Loka, Dhruva Loka. So Prabhupada writes that it's possible, but a devotee, by executing devotional service, not only realizes what the spiritual world actually is, but factually goes there to live an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. The Krishna consciousness movement is so potent that by adopting these principles of life and developing love of God, one can very easily go back home, back to Godhead. Very easily, Prabhupada says. Very easily one can go. What one has to do? What one has to do? Follow the principles that Srila Prabhupada has given us. That's all. That's what Prabhupada is writing. The Krishna consciousness movement is very potent. No ordinary movement. We are not in any ordinary movement. This is whose movement? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. Tomorrow we are celebrating Gaur Purnima. So this is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is definitely very potent because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We simply have to follow the principles that he has given us, coming in Parampara. So if we simply follow the principles that Srila Prabhupada has given us very sincerely and seriously, that's all what is required. That's what Prabhupada said so many times. Prabhupada said, don't change anything. That's all. Don't change anything. No addition, no subtraction, no conclusion. Just follow what I have told. That's it. This was Srila Prabhupada's constant emphasis. Don't change anything. Just follow what I have given. If we simply do that, then Prabhupada is giving the assurance. But that's the challenge, to simply follow what Srila Prabhupada has given. And first of all, one has to understand what Srila Prabhupada has given by carefully reading all his books and all his instructions. You see, Prabhupada gives so many instructions specifically for ISKCON devotees in his purports. That is why it's very important to read Bhaktivedanta purports, because they're specifically meant for us. No previous Acharya will give these instructions. Srila Prabhupada, out of his great compassion for devotees within ISKCON, he is giving all these instructions. And if we don't read them, we won't understand what is Srila Prabhupada's mood and mission. And of course, Srila Prabhupada has given so many instructions in so many of his purports and lectures and letters and conversations. So many instructions are there. Very important for us to read. Then we will understand what is Prabhupada's mode and mission. And then if we simply follow those principles, which Srila Prabhupada has given us, Prabhupada says very easily, one can go back home, back to God. But the challenge is simply follow. And many times Srila Prabhupada, he emphasized this. Srila Prabhupada was in, Srila Prabhupada and Shrutakirti Prabhu were in Los Angeles. And at that time, Los Angeles, as we said yesterday also, Los Angeles was like the training ground for all devotees. And there was the head pujari, Mataji, who heard from Shrutakirti Prabhu that Shrutakirti Prabhu, how he would serve chapatis to Srila Prabhupada, one hot chapati at a time. So he would go to the kitchen, one hot puffed up chapati. If the chapati was not puffed up, Prabhupada would not accept. That was the standard. Of course, that's for his digestion. So one chapati on the plate, then again, and he would offer obeisances, put the chapati on the plate, again offer obeisances, then go to the kitchen, next chapati, enter Prabhupada's room, offer obeisances, chapati on the plate, offer obeisances, again leave. Like this, Prabhupada would take 5-6 chapatis. This was the standard. Prabhupada's servant. Not so easy. That was the standard. So many times offering obeisances. And Prabhupada very proudly in his lecture, Prabhupada says, my disciples, every time they see me, they offer obeisances. Hundreds of times in a day, they are ready to offer obeisances. That was the standard. So the head pujari heard from Shrutakirti Prabhu that this is how he serves chapatis. So she thought, oh, it will be very nice to offer to the deities also like this. So the next day she did that. So one chapati at a time for the deities. And then she very happily came and told Shrutakirti Prabhu, today I did like this. I served chapatis to the deities also like this. So Srila Prabhupada immediately called her and said, who has taught you to this? Simply follow what I have taught. Don't concoct something. Then next morning, Srila Prabhupada requested for the Mangal Bhog sweets. So they got the sweets. So there were some fancy sweets made of puffed rice, mudi and good and some sweets they had made. As soon as Prabhupada saw that, Prabhupada said, who has taught you this? I taught you Rasgulla, Rasmalai, Sandesh. This is what I have taught you. Who has taught you? Who is concocting all this? In this way, Prabhupada traveled all over the world so many times. Prabhupada himself says in his lectures, I'm traveling all over the world so many times just to make sure that my disciples are following the standards. So Prabhupada was very concerned that the standards are properly followed. And that's what Prabhupada is writing here. If we simply follow these standards, follow these principles, then very easily one can go back home, back to God. We simply have to follow the program, the standards that have been set by Srila Prabhupada. And for that, first of all, we have to read, we have to understand what are the standards that Prabhupada has set, and then follow. In every aspect, Srila Prabhupada has given instructions. Mercifully, Srila Prabhupada has given instructions on every aspect of devotional life. He has not left anything. We simply have to find it. Whether it is how to chant, how to dance, how to sing, how to cook, what to offer, what not to offer, how to dress the deities, how to start gurukuls, how to preach, you name it. You name a topic and you'll find Prabhupada's instructions. So we have to be acquainted and simply follow. Then The same perfection that Dhruva Maharaj achieved can also be achievable now. And then at the end of the purport, Prabhupada says, while the scientist and the philosopher go to the moon but are disappointed in their attempts to stay there and live, the devotee makes an easy journey to other planets and ultimately goes back to Godhead. Devotees have no interest in seeing other planets, but while going back to Godhead, they see all of them as passing phases, just as one who is going to a distant place passes through many small stations. So one can have darshan of all the other planets while going back to God. Okay. Okay, please read next two translations. That is the end of what Nanda and Sunanda are saying. 26.
O immortal one, this
हो गया ना? 26.
dear King Dhruva, neither your forefather nor anyone else before you ever achieved such a transcendental planet. The planet known as Vishnu Loka, where Lord Vishnu personally resides in the highest of all. It is worshipable by the inhabitants of all other planets within the universe. Please come with us and live there eternally.
Yes. So Prabhupada is explaining about different planets and all that. Okay, read the next ones.
O immortal one, this unique aeroplane has been sent by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is worshipped by selected prayers and who is the chief of all living entities. You are quite worthy to board such a plane.
Yes. So they're inviting him to come to this very unique airplane. A very unique airplane. Who has sent it? The Supreme Lord himself has sent an airplane. Just imagine that. Supreme Lord personally has sent an airplane. And they are requesting him, please board Adirodhum. You are worthy for it. So please board this airplane. Prabhupada speaks something about airplanes. You can read that. Okay, fine. We'll take a break and then continue the rest of the chapter.
Sacred bath, dressed himself with suitable ornaments, and performed his daily spiritual duties. Thereafter, he offered his respectful obeisances to the great sages present there and accepted their blessings.
You can read the purportals.
We should mark how dutiful Dhruv Maharaj was in his devotional service, even at the time he left this material world. He was constantly alert in the performance of devotional duties. Every devotee should take his bath early in the morning and decorate his body with tilak. In Kali Yuga, one can hardly acquire gold or jeweled ornaments, but the 12 tilak marks on the body are sufficient as auspicious decorations to purify the body. Since Dhruv Maharaj was living at that time at Badrika Ashram, there were other great sages there. He did not become puffed up because the airplane sent by Lord Vishnu was waiting for him. As a humble Vaishnava, he accepted blessings from all the sages before riding on the plane brought by the chief of the Vaikuntha associates.
So a very important point which we can learn, that how even at this stage when Dhruva Maharaj is just about to board the Vaikuntha airplane to go back to Vaikuntha, to the spiritual world, still how he is so dutiful, how he is still, he's not thinking, now I'm perfect. Now why to follow all these etiquettes and rules and regulations? Why to follow? Perfection has already been achieved, isn't it? Already achieved. It's not that if he would have not taken blessings, he would not have gone to Vaikuntha. Already the plane is ready. It's not that if he would have not put his tilak, they would have said, don't go. No, nothing like that. But still, even at this point of time, he's so conscious. This is the meaning of Krishna consciousness. at all times. Even at this point of time, he's so conscious to follow all the rules and regulations. And so that's what is explained even in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Nectar of Devotion. Also, Srila Prabhupada explains. You can read this in the Nectar of Devotion. This comes in chapter 16. Chapter 16, where Srila Prabhupada is explaining about Raganuga Bhakti. And Srila Prabhupada explains that even the most advanced devotee on the highest platform of devotional service, externally he behaves just like a neophyte devotee. He's not a neophyte, but externally he behaves just like a neophyte devotee in terms of following all the rules and regulations. So the advanced devotee never poses himself as advanced. He never thinks, now I'm advanced. Now I don't have to follow all the rules and regulations. Now it's all right. No. He follows all of them very strictly, just like a neophyte devotee. Therefore, in some of our previous discussions, we were discussing how usually the neophyte devotee, he is also careful to follow. One who is very advanced and mature, he also follows. Who has a problem? The so-called mature devotee. Therefore, Prabhupada used that phrase again and again in his purports in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The so-called mature devotee always has a problem. Who is not actually mature, but who imagines himself to be mature. So therefore, one who is actually advanced, he is very strict in following all the rules and regulations. That is the symptom of his advancement. Again, Prabhupada writes in the symptoms of the Mahatma, which was symptoms of Mahatma, Bhagavad Gita. The next verse that is talking about the symptoms, 9:14. Yes, Satatam Kirtayanto Mam Yatantascha Dridhavrataha. Dridhavrataha. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes, the Mahatma with great determination strictly follows all the rules and regulations. Not that now I become Mahatma, so no need to follow. No. That is the symptom of the Mahatma, that he strictly follows, great determination, Dridhavrataha. And so we can see all these examples. We can see how Srila Prabhupada was so strict in following everything. So we have that example, 1977 Kumbh Mela, January. Srila Prabhupada was in Prayagraj, very cold, extremely cold. So devotees were not coming for Mangalarti. Srila Prabhupada, even though very sick, 1977, Srila Prabhupada was so sick. But just to set the example, Srila Prabhupada went under the hand pump and began to take water under bath under the cold water, just to set the example. And so we find that how the acharyas, the great devotees, they set the example by following everything very strictly. Here, Dhruva Maharaj, perfection, absolute perfection. The spiritual airplane has come in front of him, but still he's so careful. And that's what Prabhupada writes, that he was constantly alert in the performance of devotional duties, constantly alert. So what is the need to be alert? Why to be always so alert in performing all the duties? What is the need? Yes, Kit.
Prabhu, as you're mentioning about Dhruva Maharaj, so the same thing in a purport, I will tell the answer again. In, I think, third canto, when Lord requesting Brahma to start the progeny, so again, he went to the lordships and he started begging prayers. Please give me the strength. Lord comes and says, my blessings are already there on you. So that's the reason I am only ordering you just to start the progeny. So there in the purpose of Prabhupada is to write, this should be the mode. Our Sampradaya Acharya, like Brahma Madhva Sampradaya, so Brahmaji himself is teaching us. So Prabhupada writes that if we are not being in at every level, we may fall prey that I am the doer. See, I am the power. So that is showing that going and seeking the blessings and begging again mercy shower on me.
Correct.
So not fall prey to again, I am the doer.
Correct. Okay, so that we don't fall prey to the doership mentality, right? Good point. Solution prayers.
There is always the danger that Prabhupada says the accident is there even in the royal road. So one should be always alert.
Yes.
To follow the rules and regulations.
Yes, alert so that one does not fall prey to Maya. One does not become a victim. Yes, you will. Correct. So what's the casualty? What's the casualty?
Casualty is like he may at times may forget Krishna, or in case of when it is a question of life and death, or he may fall prey to some other wrong activity also.
Right. Yes. So therefore, and again, Prabhupada mentions these points also in the section of Bharat Maharaj. How Bharat Maharaj, even though he was on such an elevated platform, but a little bit of inattention, and there was problem. Yes, Kidur.
In the same purport only, Prabhupada is writing that even a Brahmana may fall from the Brahma Tejas or Parva Brahmanical excellences due to the association with many fallen conditioned souls. But Brahma as a supreme-most Brahmana is afraid of such a fall down. So therefore, praise to the Lord for protection. So this is the warning for one and all in the spiritual advancement of life. Unless one is sufficiently protected by the Lord, he may fall down from his spiritual position.
I think so in that same purport, Srila Prabhupada is talking about how a devotional service is like walking on razor's edge. Is it the same purport?
Yes, The path of spiritual life is stated in the Vedas to be like the edges of the sharpened razor. A little inattentiveness may at once create havoc and bloodshed, but one who is completely surrendered soul, always seeking protection from the Lord in the discharge of his entrusted duties, has no fear of falling into material contamination.
Right. So very important points. Devotional service is like walking on razor's edge. A little inattention and there will be bloodshed, havoc. So therefore, one always has to be extremely alert. Maya is just looking for a little discrepancy in order for there to be, to attack. So therefore, extremely alert. And Dhruva Maharaj, as an acharya, is showing through his example how even at the time when has achieved perfection, but still one thing is alert in following the various rules and regulations, and the second thing is always humble. Even at this point, he's taking blessings of the sages. The sages are going to remain in the material world. He's already going, but he is taking their blessings. That is the mood of the Vaishnava, always humble. And of course, again, we have the wonderful example of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, how before writing the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he took blessings of all the Vaishnavas and the Supreme Lord. So this is always the example that we see. Okay, please continue reading, text 29.
Before getting abroad, Dhruva Maharaj worshipped the airplane, circumnavigated it, and also offered obeisances to the associates of Vishnu. In the meantime, he became as brilliant and illuminating as molten gold. He was thus completely prepared to board the transcendental plane.
Yes, so you can see that how Dhruva Maharaj is worshipping the plane. Why is worshipping the plane? Right, everything is absolute. So Lord, his paraphernalia, everything is non-different. Everything is on the spiritual platform. So therefore, he's worshipping the airplane and circumambulating, then offering obeisances to the associates, Nanda and Sunanda. You can see all this. What is the need? But you can see so careful, even at this point of time, to follow all these procedures, rules, regulations, everything. So perfect. That's what Prabhupada says. In the absolute world, the plane, the associates of Lord Vishnu and Lord Vishnu himself are all spiritual. There is no material contamination. In quality, everything there is one. And so Dhruva Maharaj knew all this very well as a pure Vaishnav, and he offered his respects to the associates and to the plane before riding in it. But in the meantime, his body changed into spiritual existence, and therefore it was illuminating like molten gold. In this way, he also became one with the other paraphernalia of Vishnu Loka. So he also became spiritual. He became one with the. So, of course, then Prabhupada says about Mayavadis, they don't understand about this oneness. Okay. And then Prabhupada speaks about the three modes, Sattvagun, Rajagun, Tamogun, living in different places. One is affected by the modes. But to live in the temple means to live in Vaikuntha Loka. Everything in the temple is as worshipable as Lord Vishnu or Krishna. There's one lecture of Srila Prabhupada where Prabhupada is saying, don't think that the Lord is only on the altar. The Lord is everywhere in the temple. Every inch of this temple, the Lord is present. Therefore, it is not that one only keeps the altar clean and the rest of the temple is dirty. No, every part of this temple is Krishna's property. And therefore, every inch of this temple must be kept sparkling clean. And every aspect of this temple has to be carefully protected because it is all Krishna's property. So yes, so therefore, everything in the temple is as worshipable as Lord Vishnu or Krishna. Everything, because this is all property of the Lord. Nothing can be mishandled, misused, wasted. Everything is the Lord's property. And Prabhupada showed it by his own personal example. You may know that pastime when Srila Prabhupada was in Vrindavan. Prabhupada called the temple manager at midnight. Midnight, Prabhupada called. And the manager came and Prabhupada asked, can you hear? What, Prabhupada? Can you hear? No, Prabhupada. Can't you hear that sound? So there was the sound of a drop of water falling from a tap. Tick, 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 tick. There was the sound of a drop of water falling from a tap. Prabhupada was listening to that in the night. Middle of the night, he calls the manager. Go and close it. That was how Prabhupada was attentive. You can read in the 7th canto. This is 7th canto, 13th chapter. There's a series of verses there. Something in the range of 15 to 20. So the series of verses there where these are the teachings of the Avadut Brahman to Prahlad Maharaj, where the Avadut Brahman is speaking about the results of accumulating wealth. Very beautiful verses. The results of accumulating wealth. And in those purports, Srila Prabhupada gives an instruction, a direct instruction to the managers of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada says, every paisa, this Prabhupada words, every paisa must simply be used for Krishna's service. If it is used for sense gratification, everything will be spoiled. These are Prabhupada's expectations. How one must be so careful in using everything in Krishna's service because it is all Krishna's property. Srila Prabhupada was in Juhu. Srila Prabhupada was sitting in his room, and you may have seen in Juhu, there are so many coconut trees. You have seen coconut trees in the compound around. So Prabhupada calls the manager, Again, he says, do you see? Prabhupada sometimes would ask these mystical questions. Prabhupada, do you see? No. Prabhupada said, I can see so many things, but you cannot see. And then Prabhupada pointed out to the coconut trees. Do you see that? That man over there, he's breaking coconut leaves. Not even coconuts. Prabhupada is breaking coconut leaves and taking them. Stop him. Prabhupada was so attentive to every small thing. Because he could see very clearly everything as Krishna's property. So attentive. Okay, somebody may say, okay, Prabhupada was attentive only to things within ISKCON's property. No. Prabhupada once saw a tap leaking in the garden, public garden. Prabhupada told devotees to go and close it. So it doesn't matter. The pure devotee is able to see Krishna everywhere. Sees everything as Krishna's energy. Sthavar jangam deki, na deki taramudhi. Sarvatra hoy nija ishtadeva spurti. So, yes. So everything in the temple is as worshipable as Lord Vishnu or Krishna. Please continue.
When Dhruva Maharaj was attempting to get on the transcendental plane, he saw death personified, approached him. Not caring for death, however, he took advantage of the opportunity to put his feet on the head of death, and thus he got up on the airplane, which was as big as a house.
Yes. So as he was attempting to get on the plane, death personified approached. Why did he approach? Prabhupada is writing in the purport. In the beginning of the purport, Prabhupada is speaking about the passing away of devotee and non-devotee. We know the famous example of the cat and the kitten and the mouse. So Prabhupada is explaining that analogy. And then towards the end of that first paragraph, Prabhupada says, when Dhruva Maharaj boarded the airplane, he took advantage of the arrival of death personified who came to offer him obeisances. That was why death personified came. Because Dhruva Maharaj has conquered death. So therefore, death personified came to offer obeisances. And then he put his feet on the head of death. He got up on the unique airplane, which is as big as the house, Griham. And then he's talking about the big airplane of Karda Muni. Okay, fine. Please continue.
At that time, drums and kettle drums resounded from the sky. The chief Gandharvas began to sing, and other demigods showered flowers like torrents of rain upon Dhruva Maharaj.
Continue.
Dhruva was seated in the transcendental airplane, which was just about to start. When he remembered his poor mother, Suniti, he thought to himself, how shall I go alone to the Vaikuntha planet and live behind my poor mother?
So he remembered his mother Suniti, who was responsible for giving instructions by which now he's on the path back home, back to Godheads. So Prabhupada begins by saying Dhruva had a feeling of obligation to his mother Suniti. And then he explains how Dhruva Maharaj's mother Suniti was his Path Pradaksha Guru. And he's explaining Path Pradaksha Guru. Such a guru is sometimes called Shiksha Guru. Although Narad Muni was his Diksha Guru, initiating spiritual master, Suniti, his mother, was the first who gave him instruction on how to achieve the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The next sentence is an important statement. It is the duty of the Shiksha Guru or Diksha Guru to instruct the disciple in the right way. This is first part of the statement, which is the responsibility of Shiksha Gurus and Diksha Gurus. The responsibility is to instruct in the right way. If the Gurus don't instruct in the right way, then they are not performing their responsibility. And then what is the responsibility of the disciple? And it depends on the disciple to execute the process. So both have got their responsibility. The responsibility of the gurus is to give instruction, and the responsibility of the disciple is to follow. Srila Prabhupada was giving an initiation lecture. Srila Prabhupada says, almost towards the end of the lecture, Prabhupada is saying, So these are the instructions. But if you don't follow the instructions, I cannot protect you. Very clear, Prabhupada says. You can see we quote this in the ISKCON Disciples course. We show this quote also from a lecture. Prabhupada is saying, if you don't follow the instructions, I cannot protect you. And then Prabhupada gives the analogy of the man is drowning in the well, the rope is thrown. What the person has to do? At least that much he has to do, no? He has to catch hold of the rope. If he says, no, you lift me up like that only. No, at least catch hold of the rope. So if the person doesn't catch hold of the rope is thrown. That is what the Guru is doing. If you remember in a previous discussion, we discussed as to what is the meaning of Guru Prasad or Guru Kripa. You remember that? Yes. The training given by the Guru for his progress in Krishna consciousness, that is Guru Prasad or Guru Kripa. That is Guru's duty. Guru's duty is to give the training, to give the instructions. And Lord Rishabhdev, in his teachings, he says that the responsible person, he must continue to give instructions to the subordinate, even though the subordinate may not sometimes follow. Without getting angry, he must continue to give instructions because that's his responsibility, that's his duty. The Shastra again and again, throughout Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is emphasizing on this point of duty. Everyone needs to perform their duty. Karmanyevadikaraste. Karma means duty. Duty has to be performed. Throughout the Gita, Krishna is emphasizing this. Perform your duty. Without attachment to the result, duty has to be performed. So Guru's duty is to give instructions, to give training, and that must be continued. Even though subordinate may not sometimes follow, duty has to be continued. And then subordinate's duty, disciple's duty is to follow. If he does not do his duty of following, then Guru cannot save him. Guru is also helpless. He can't do anything. Prabhupada says it very clearly. If you don't follow, I cannot protect you. So that's the point that Prabhupada is making over here. So according to the Shastric injunctions, there is no difference between Shiksha Guru and Diksha Guru. And generally, the Shiksha Guru later on becomes the Diksha Guru. Okay. And then the next paragraph, Prabhupada says, whatever plan the Supreme Personality of Godhead contemplates immediately fructifies. Similarly, a devotee who is completely dependent on the Supreme Lord can also fulfill his wishes by the grace of the Lord. The Lord fulfills his wishes independently, but a devotee fulfills his wishes simply by being dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, as soon as Dhruva Maharaj thought of his poor mother, he was assured by the associates of Vishnu that Suniti was also going to Vaikuntha Loka in another plane. Dhruva Maharaj thought that he was going alone to Vaikuntha Loka, leaving behind his mother, which was not very auspicious because people would criticize him for going alone to Vaikuntha Loka and not carrying with him Suniti, who had given him so much. But Dhruva also considered that he was not personally the supreme. Therefore, if Krishna fulfilled his desires, only then would it be possible. So yes, Dhruva Maharaj had a desire, mother also should go. But he also knew that unless Krishna desires, it is not going to be fulfilled. That is the conviction of the devotee. The devotee clearly understands, okay, I may have my desire, but Krishna has to sanction it. And he told Dhruva that his mother, so Krishna could immediately understand his mind. And he told Dhruva that his mother was also going with him. Did Krishna come and tell? Yes? Yes, his associates told. But Prabhupada is saying Krishna told, but actually it was Nanda and Sunanda who told that yes, the mother is already going. This incident proves that a pure devotee like Dhruva Maharaj can fulfill all his desires by the grace of the Lord. Prabhupada keeps adding this phrase again and again, by the grace of the Lord, by the grace of the Lord. Again and again, he keeps adding. That is the consciousness of a devotee. A devotee is always conscious of this fact that anything can happen only by the grace of the Lord. So Prabhupada keeps adding that phrase everywhere, by the grace of the Lord. You can see so many places. So he can fulfill all his desires by the grace of the Lord. He becomes exactly like the Lord. And thus, whatever he thinks, whenever he thinks of anything, his wish is immediately fulfilled. And of course, we can see again in the life of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada desired so many things and the Lord fulfilled all of that. Okay, please read 33.
The great associates of Vaikuntaloka, Nanda and Sunanda, could understand the mind of Dhruva Maharaj, and thus they showed him that his mother Suniti was going forward in another plane.
This is a very important purport. Please read.
This incident proves that the Shiksha or Diksha Guru who has a disciple who strongly execute devotional service like Dhruva Maharaj can be carried by the disciple even though the instructor is not as advanced. Although Shuniti was an instructor to Dhruva Maharaj, she could not go to the forest because she was a woman, nor could she execute austerities and penances as Dhruva Maharaj did. Still, Dhruva Maharaj was able to take his mother with him. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj also delivered his atheistic father Hiranyakashipu. The conclusion is that a disciple or an offspring who is a very strong devotee can carry with him to Vaikuntha Loka, either his father, mother, or Shiksha or Diksha Guru. Srila Bhakti Siddhant Saraswati Thakur used to say, if I could perfectly deliver even one soul back home, back to Godhead, I would think my mission, propagating Krishna consciousness, to be successful. The Krishna consciousness movement is spreading now all over the world. And sometimes I think that even though I am crippled in many ways, if one of my disciples becomes as strong as Dhruva Maharaj, then he will be able to carry me with him to Vaikuntha Loka.
This is the epitome of Srila Prabhupada's humility. This is the epitome. There's nothing you can think of as a better example of humility. Srila Prabhupada is so humble, saying if one of my disciples becomes qualified, he can take. So anyway, the important point here is that how if one becomes qualified as a devotee, then so many else get the benefits of being a devotee. We find a similar pastime. Of course, everything is based on the platform of humility, but we do find a similar pastime between Sripad Ramacharya and Kuresh. After Kuresh's eyes were blinded by King Kolatunga. So anyway, there's that whole pastime. But there also we find Ramacharya expressing a similar sentiment towards his disciple Kuresh. Anyway, yes, so many get the benefits. Okay, please continue.
While Dhruva Maharaj was passing through space, he gradually saw all the planets of the solar system, and on the path he saw all the demigods in their airplanes, showering flowers upon him like rain.
Okay, so again, some important points in this purport. There's a Vedic version, Yasmin Vijnate Sarvam Evam Vijnatam Bhavati, which means that by knowing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything becomes known to the devotee. Similarly, by going to the planet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can know all the other planetary systems on the path to Vaikuntha. Okay, that point we already saw that. While boarding the Vaikuntha airplane, his body changed. Dhruva Maharaj's body changed to a completely spiritual golden hue. No one can surpass the higher planets in a material body. Okay? No one can surpass the higher planets in material body. But therefore Prabhupada has that conviction. No one can go on the moon in this material body. It is not possible. But when one gets a spiritual body, he can travel not only to the higher planetary system of the material world, but even to the still higher planetary system known as Vaikuntha Loka. So one gets the highest qualification, then he can go to the lower planets also, the lower material planets. And then he says in the next paragraph, it should be noted also that while Suniti was going to Vaikuntha Loka, she also changed her body into spiritual form. So the body has to change to spiritual form to go to the Vaikuntha Loka. And Prabhupada, very respectfully, Prabhupada is writing, like Shri Suniti, every mother should train her child to become a devotee like Dhruva Maharaj. So a nice instruction for mothers. Every mother like Suniti must take care of her son and train him to become a brahmachari from the age of 5 years and to undergo austerities and penances for spiritual realization. The benefit will be that if her son becomes a strong devotee like Dhruva, certainly not only will he be transferred back home, back to Godhead, but she will also be transferred with him to the spiritual world, even though she may be unable to undergo austerities and penances executing devotional service. Right? So a good impetus for all mothers to train their children to become nice devotees. Okay, continue please.
Dhruva Maharaj thus surpassed the 7 planetary systems of the great sages who are known as Saptarishi. Beyond that reason, he achieved the transcendental situation of permanent life in the planet where Lord Vishnu lives.
Yes, so he achieved the spiritual planets where Lord Vishnu lives. Yes. So this is the section from 17 to 35, where Dhruva Maharaj goes back to the Vaikuntha Loka, to Dhruva Loka, to live eternally along with Lord Vishnu. So, okay, we can continue to reading. Then there is a description of the Vaikuntha planets. Please read.
The self-effulgent Vaikuntha planets, by whose illumination alone all the illuminating planets within this material world give off reflected light, cannot be reached by those who are not merciful to other living entities. Only persons who constantly engage in welfare activities for all other living entities can reach the Vaikuntha planets.
So here there's a description of the Vaikuntha planets. So in the first paragraph of the purport, Prabhupada is specifically speaking about the Vaikuntha planets, how they're self-effulgent, and all the other illuminous bodies get the effulgence from the Vaikuntha planets. And then he's talking about who becomes qualified. There is no philanthropic work within this material world, but Krishna consciousness that can engage a person 24 hours a day. A Krishna conscious being is always engaged in planning how to take all of suffering humanity back home, back to Godhead. Even if one is not successful in reclaiming all the fallen souls back to Godhead, still, because he is Krishna conscious, his path to Vaikuntha Loka is open. He personally becomes qualified to enter the Vaikuntha Loka, and if anyone follows such a devotee, he also enters into Vaikuntha Loka. Very important point. So, by preaching and by engaging in preaching activities and by engaging ourselves in this preaching mission of ISKCON, what happens? Prabhupada is saying everyone may not go back to the spiritual world. Everyone may not become qualified to go. But at least what happens? The person who is preaching and the person who is engaging in devotional service, he becomes purified and he becomes qualified. That is why Srila Prabhupada, in many lectures, Srila Prabhupada says, we are preaching because what? Why we are preaching? Huh? Satisfy Krishna, that's correct. Even if one person goes, yes. Prabhupada says, we are preaching because it is the instruction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who said, Yare deko tare kaho Krishna upadesh amar agyai guru hoi tarai desh. Because it is Mahaprabhu's instruction, therefore we are preaching. And then Srila Prabhupada says, my Guru Maharaj said, even if no one comes, does not matter, preach to the 4 walls. So we are preaching not so that somebody can get delivered. That may happen, may not happen. That is not so important. But we are preaching because it is instruction. And because we follow that instruction, then Krishna is pleased. And that's how the person who is preaching, he becomes qualified to enter into Vaikuntha Loka. And then one who follows him also becomes qualified. Okay, so some important points here. Okay, please go to the next one.
Persons who are
Okay, let's recite this verse. This is an important verse actually. Shanta samadrisha shuddha sarva bhutanuranjanaha yantyanjasachyuta padam achyuta priya bandhava.
Persons who are peaceful, equipoised, cleansed, and purified, and who know the art of pleasing all other living entities, keep friendship only with the devotees of the Lord, they alone can very easily achieve the perfection of going back home, back to Godhead.
Okay, so these are some of the qualifications required to go back home, back to Godhead. So there are all these qualities: Shanta, that is peaceful; Samadrisha, equipoised; Shuddha, cleansed, purified; Sarva Bhuta Anuranjanaha, that means pleasing to all living entities; and Achyuta Priya Bandhava, friendship with the devotees who are dear to the Lord, Achyuta Priya. So all these qualities make one qualified to go back home, back to Godhead. So we have to try to cultivate these various qualities by which one can become qualified. And Prabhupada is explaining all these qualities here in the purport. At the end of the first paragraph, Prabhupada writes, but a devotee is peaceful because he is fully surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thinks of himself as completely helpless, just as a child feels complete peace in depending on the parents. So devotee is completely peaceful, for he depends on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so that's how a devotee is peaceful. He knows that on my own, nothing is possible. So therefore, he is completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord, and therefore he is like a child, totally dependent on the parents, therefore he is peaceful. Okay, and then he is equipoised, he doesn't discriminate on the platform of the bodily concept of life. And then Prabhupada says, without the association of devotees, one cannot advance in Krishna consciousness. Of course, we already had an elaborate discussion on association. Prabhupada writes a similar point in 4.9.11 also. But again, Prabhupada is stating this point. Therefore, we have established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Factually, whoever lives in this society automatically develops Krishna consciousness. Because society of devotees. So if one lives in the society, then automatically one develops Krishna consciousness. Devotees are dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Supreme Personality of Godhead is only dear to devotees. On this platform only can one make progress in Krishna consciousness. Persons in Krishna consciousness or devotees of the Lord can please everyone, as is evident in the Krishna consciousness movement. We invite everyone without discrimination. We request everyone to sit down, chant Hare Krishna mantra, take as much prasad as we can supply. And thus everyone is pleased with us. This is the qualification. Okay. And then since the devotee constantly chants the Hare Krishna mantra, no contamination of this material world can touch him. Muchi hoy, shuchi hoy, yadi Krishna bhaje. So everyone can get purified. Okay, please continue. So these are qualifications to go back to Godhead. Continue, please.
In this way, the fully Krishna conscious Dhruva Maharaj, the exalted son of Maharaj Uttanpad, attained the summit of 3 statuses of planetary systems.
Continue, please.
Saint Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, descendant of Kuru, as a herd of bulls circumambulates a central pole on their right side, all the luminaries within the universal sky unceasingly circumambulate the abode of Dhruva Maharaj with great force and speed.
Continue.
After observing the glories of Dhruva Maharaj, the great sage Narada, playing his veena, went to the sacrificial arena of the Prachetas and very happily chanted the following 3 verses.
Okay, so Narad Muni, the spiritual master, he's so happy that his disciple has become so exalted. And so he wants to speak about the glories of his disciple. So he's going to other devotees and glorifying his disciple. So the Prachetas, so he goes to the Prachetas, they're performing some sacrifice and he's glorifying his disciple Dhruva Maharaj. So Prabhupada writes, as a father is very happy to see the son's advancement in every respect. So the spiritual master is very happy to observe the ascendancy of his disciple. So Narad Muni is very happy. We can see in the 7th canto also we see how Narad Muni glorifies the disciple Prahlad also. Yes. So it's not that, so you see on the spiritual platform, there's no envy. It's not that the spiritual master is thinking, hey, this fellow, I only brought him. Now he's becoming better than me. There's no envy. So Narad Muni is very happily glorifying his own disciple. His own disciples is glorifying. Dhruva, Prahlad, he glorifies them. There's no envy. Sometimes it happens. We think this fellow should remain a little below me only. He should not go above. But there's no envy here. Okay. So what is Narad Muni glorifying?
The great sage Narada said, simply by the influence of his spiritual advancement and powerful austerity, Dhruva Maharaj, the son of Suniti, who was devoted to her husband, acquired an exalted position not possible to attain even for the so-called Vedantists or strict followers of the Vedic principles, not to speak of an ordinary human beings.
Continue, please.
The great sage Narada continued, just see how Dhruva Maharaj, aggrieved at the harsh words of his stepmother, went to the forest at the age of only 5 years and under my direction underwent austerity. Although the Supreme Personality of a Godhead is unconquerable, Dhruva Maharaj defeated him with the specific qualifications possessed by the Lord's devotees.
So Dhruva Maharaj, all the Supreme Lord is unconquerable. He is Ajitam. He is Ajitam, but he was Jigaya tad bhakta gunai parajitam. So Supreme Lord is Ajita, but he became defeated. He became defeated by what? Tad bhakta gunai. He became defeated by the qualities of the devotee. That is what conquers the Lord. That is what attracts the Lord. It's always the qualities. So again, what are the references for this? The Lord is conquered or captured by the devotee's qualities. Some references?
Bhagavad Gita chapter 12.
Yes, Bhagavad Gita chapter 12 verses 13 to 20. That whole list of qualities by which Krishna becomes pleased. Any other reference? Yes. What is that? Okay, and you can find out what is that. Yes, Prithu Maharaj, after the whole Indra and Prithu Yajna, that whole pastime happened, Lord Vishnu comes and Lord Vishnu personally says, I'm not pleased by austerities, performance of Yajna, I'm not pleased by all this, but I'm captivated by your wonderful qualities. So that is the ultimate result, the prayojan of the practice of devotional service. Therefore, Krishna at the end of the whole section of Bhakti Yoga, 7 to 12, he concludes that by giving a list of qualities, because that is the ultimate prayojan. When one becomes purified, then all the natural qualities of the soul become awakened. They become manifest. So that is the prayojan. If one wants to see for oneself, Prabhupada writes this again in chapter 13, verses 8 to 12 purport. Srila Prabhupada writes, if one wants to see how much one is advancing in devotional service, this is the test. How much one is developing these qualities, because the qualities become manifest to the degree one becomes purified. So here also it is being mentioned that the Lord is unconquerable, Ajita, but he became defeated, Parajitam, by the wonderful qualities of Dhruva Maharaj. Yes. So at the end of the first paragraph, Prabhupada writes, in the beginning, one must accept a bona fide spiritual master, and if a devotee follows strictly the direction of the spiritual master, as Dhruva Maharaj followed the instructions of Narad Muni, then it is not difficult for him to achieve the favor of the Lord. The sum total of devotional qualities is development of unalloyed love for Krishna. This unalloyed love for Krishna can be achieved simply by hearing about Krishna. Lord Chaitanya accepted this principle that if one in any position submissively hears the transcendental message spoken by Krishna or about Krishna, then gradually he develops the quality of unalloyed love. And by that love only, he can conquer the unconquerable. The Mayavadi philosophers aspire to become one with the Supreme Lord, but a devotee surpasses that position. Okay, so that's how one can conquer the Lord, by unalloyed devotional service, unalloyed love. And that is all possible when one submissively hears. And we already had a discussion on what does it mean to submissively hear. Text 43.
Dhruva Maharaj attained an exalted position at the age of only 5 or 6 years. After undergoing austerity for 6 months, alas, a great Kshatriya cannot achieve such a position even after undergoing austerities for many, many years.
Okay, so in these 3 verses, Narad Muni is glorifying his disciple Dhruva Maharaj in the assembly of the Prachetas. And towards the end of this purport, Srila Prabhupada is writing the most important lesson from this entire pastime of Dhruva Maharaj. The lesson from the life of Dhruva Maharaj is, and this is the conclusive lesson from the life of Dhruva Maharaj. Prabhupada has beautifully, precisely, eloquently, he has described in just a few, in one sentence practically, he has described the essence of the pastime. The lesson from the life of Dhruva Maharaj is that if one likes, that means what? The free will of the jiva is always there. If one likes, it is up to us whether we want it or not. If one likes, one can attain Vaikuntha Loka in one life without waiting for many other lives. My Guru Maharaj, Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada used to say that every one of his disciples could attain Vaikuntha Loka in this life without waiting for another life to execute devotional service. Now, how it is possible? One simply has to become as serious and sincere as Dhruva Maharaj. That is how it is possible. As sincere and serious as Dhruva Maharaj. This is the essence of the pastime. One simply has to become as sincere and serious as Dhruva Maharaj. Then it is quite possible to attain Vaikuntha Loka and go back home, back to Godhead in one life. This is what we have to learn from this whole pastime. And this has to be our contemplation, how to become as sincere and serious as Dhruva Maharaj. This has to be our contemplation. So this can be an ongoing contemplation. Not that at the end of this unit, then finished. Dhruva Maharaj is finished. Then forget Dhruva Maharaj. No. This has to be an ongoing contemplation. How to become as sincere and serious as Dhruva Maharaj. So if one contemplates, one practices, then Prabhupada is saying, then it is possible in one life. Okay, final few verses, please read.
The great sage Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, whatever you have asked from me about the great reputation and character of Dhruva Maharaj, I have explained to you in all detail. Great saintly persons and devotees very much like to hear about Dhruva Maharaj.
Prabhupada writes, whether we hear the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Lord, or we hear about the character, reputation, activities of his devotees, they are all one and the same. Okay, so therefore, for us, hearing about devotees, hearing about Srila Prabhupada, so many books on Srila Prabhupada's pastimes, those are also equally important. They're as good as the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. So, towards the end of the purport, Prabhupada says, a sincere devotee should read every chapter and every word of Srimad Bhagavatam. For the beginning verses describe that it is the ripened fruit of all Vedic literature. Devotees should not try to avoid even a word of the Srimad Bhagavatam. not try to avoid even a word of the Srimad. Okay, please continue.
By hearing the narration of Dhruv Maharaj, one can fulfill the desires for wealth, reputation, and increased duration of life. It is so auspicious that one can even go to a heavenly planet or attain Dhruvaloka, which was achieved by Dhruv Maharaj, just by hearing about him. The demigods also become pleased because this narration is so glorious and it is so powerful that it can counteract all the results of one's sinful action.
Okay, so this last section is the Falashruti of hearing this pastime. So, Prabhuji, you can just read all the translations till the end.
Anyone who hears the narration of Dhruv Maharaj and who repeatedly tries with faith and devotion to understand his pure character attains the pure devotional platform and executes pure devotional service. By such activities, one can diminish the threefold miserable conditions of material life. Anyone who hears this narration of Dhruv Maharaj acquires exalted qualities like him. For anyone who desires greatness, prowess, or influence, here is the process by which to acquire them. And for thoughtful men who want adoration, here is the proper means. The great sage Maitreya recommended one should chant of the character and activities of Dhruv Maharaj, both in the morning and in the evening, with great attention and care, in a society of Brahmanas or other twice-born persons. Persons who have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord should recite this narration of Dhruv Maharaj without taking remuneration. Specifically, recitation is recommended on the full moon or dark moon day, on the day after Ekadashi, on the appearance of the Shravana star at the end of a particular tithi, or the occasion of Vyatipat at the end of the month, or on Sunday. Such recitation should of course be performed before a favorable audience. When recitation is performed this way, without professional motive, the reciter and the audience become perfect. The narration of Dhruv Maharaj is sublime knowledge for the attainment of immortality. Persons unaware of the absolute truth can be led to the path of truth. Those who, out of transcendental kindness, take on the responsibility of becoming master protectors of the poor living entities, automatically gain the interest and blessings of the demigods. The transcendental activities of Dhruv Maharaj are well known all over the world and they are very pure. In childhood, Dhruv Maharaj rejected all kinds of toys and playthings, left the protection of his mother, and seriously took shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu. My dear Vidura, I therefore conclude this narration, for I have described to you all its details.
Yes, thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the fourth canto, 12th chapter, Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Dhruva Maharaj Goes Back to Godheads. Just a few points from Srila Prabhupada's purports. Prabhupada writes in the purport to text 46, Prabhupada says, if one simply reads over and over again about Dhruva Maharaj, by hearing and reading this chapter, one can attain the highest perfection of life in any way he desires. Most importantly, he gets the chance to become a pure devotee. To become a great devotee means to finish all miserable conditions of materialistic life. So we know Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also heard these pastimes of Dhruva and Prahlad hundreds of times from Gadadhar Pandits. Right. And then also in the purport to text 48, Prabhupada says, it is said that only in the association of devotees can one understand the importance of the character and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotees. So therefore, further down it says, this discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam, which describes the character and pastimes of devotees and the Lord, is very quickly effective. Okay, so when the discussion takes place in the association of devotees, then it is very quickly effective. Therefore, Sadam Prasangan Mamaviri Samvido. And then Prabhupada says the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has been organized for this purpose. Again, a mood and mission statement. Prabhupada is specifically saying the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has been organized for this purpose. What is the purpose? In every center of this society, Prabhupada is given instruction for every center of this society, not only in the morning, evening, or noon, but practically 24 hours a day, there is continuous devotional service going on. anyone who comes in contact with the society automatically becomes a devotee. So this is what should be happening 24 hours a day, devotional service. Okay, so in this way, this is the Falashruti that has been described. Okay, another important purport, purport to text 50, the qualifications of the reciter and the hearer. The process can be summarized as follows. The audience must be faithfully receptive to the Bhagavad message, and the reciter should completely depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so there's the qualifications of the audience and the speaker. Bhagavad recitation must not be a business. If done in the right way, not only does the reciter achieve perfect satisfaction, but the Lord also is very satisfied with the reciter and the audience, and thus both are liberated from material bondage simply by the process of hearing. Okay, so we try to have some discussions on this pastime of Dhruva Maharaj. So I don't think so we have any time for questions at this time, but I think so we have taken some questions in between. So I am extremely grateful to all the devotees here for kindly agreeing to be part of this course and encouraging us in our service to Srila Prabhupada. So we're extremely grateful for to all the devotees for taking out your valuable time to come and attend these discussions on these important aspects of Srimad Bhagavatam. Definitely, personally, my understanding on the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam is too insignificant. And I'm simply trying to repeat a few things, whatever I've heard. So please forgive me for all the discrepancies and mistakes. Thank you very much for kindly allowing me to do this service. Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Samved Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I also thank His Grace Vamsivadan Prabhu for having nice discussion on Dhruva Maharaj's pastimes. Vamsivadan Prabhu is very determined devotee. His sadhana, we can see in the morning, early morning, he wakes up and reads purport of Srila Prabhupada, and he's repeating the Srila Prabhupada's purports as it is. So we can see how, even though sometimes some devotees have quoted some of the purports in between somewhere, but he remembers the rest of the purports without seeing the purport. So we are very grateful to Vamsivadan Prabhu. Thank you very much for you. And we express our gratitude by chanting one Hare Krishna Mahamantra for Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Hare.
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. At the same time, we are requesting Prabhuji to give his valuable session more and more. Hare Krishna in future. Hare Krishna.
So I may have spoken many things. My practice is too far from anything. So I humbly request all the devotees to kindly pray and bless so that sometime I can begin to practice these instructions that Srila Prabhupada has given in these purports. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Vanja Galvaduru Vishnu.